Welcome to the AIOps Evolution Weekly broadcast, a series on the integration of artificial intelligence in the ever-evolving IT ops landscape. Discover how AIOps is transforming operations to create flow in organizations. And remember to join the AIOps Evolution community to stay connected and subscribe to the show at AIOpsevolution.com. Now, let's join our hosts, Sean McDermott and Bill Driscoll, IT thought leaders, visionaries, and the voices on the other end of the mic for the latest episode of AIOps Evolution Weekly.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's AIOps Evolution Weekly broadcast. My name is Sean McDermott. I'm your host, and Bill Driscoll, my co-host. Welcome, Bill. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday, Sean.
Good. You got any plans this weekend? Anything exciting?
Yeah, actually, road trip, college road trip weekend. So we're heading south, looking at about 5-6 schools. So it's just quick, get out, walk around for 2 hours, and then move on to the next one. So.
Wow, and you're going to do like five colleges in one weekend?
Well, I'm doing a little bit of a long weekend, so taking a couple of days off beginning of next week. So that'll be our So it's coming. My daughter's going to be a senior, so it's that time.
Excellent. I have all three of my daughters in college, so I've gone through all that 3 times, and it's actually fun. You know, it's good bonding time with the kids. But
yeah, I don't know what's harder, picking a college or an AIOps platform. You
know? well, you don't have to pick the college. Your kid gets to pick the college, so it's really easy for you. Okay, so let's get started. We got a couple topics today. We're going to talk a little bit about AIOps and network management. We're going to spend a fair amount of time talking about the future of AIOps and where it's going. And we have a couple different subjects on that. So to get started, let's talk about this article that came out the other day, and it's really talking about network management. We talk about this a lot on this broadcast, and that is, what are the use cases? And AIOps obviously is for IT operations areas, and one of the biggest use cases going on right now is really around monitoring and event management. So, new article come out from a guy named Jubil Matthew, who's at Live Action, and actually is referring to a survey that was done by EMA. So EMA did a survey last year, and they're putting out a lot of content around the survey. So they must have been doing a lot of really collect a lot of good information. I've seen, we've talked about the EMA. We've talked about the EMA survey a few times. So, but this one, basically what they're saying is the primary use case is around network operations and event management, and they break it down between network monitoring and security monitoring, which makes total sense to me, right? Because this is what we've been saying before, and it's a very data-driven exercise, which is perfect for AIOps, and it's time critical because, network management, and I think they really mean infrastructure management, is time critical in making sure that you can get services back up and running, especially critical business services. And security event monitoring is really key too. And time is of essence when you've got a potential security event going on. So they've thrown out a lot of statistics, but we can get to that in a moment. But obviously, I think you read this article. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, one is they said the top 4 use cases, right? Which I'll get into the statistics a little bit. They go from 56% of users to 52% in the top 4. So that it's almost like it's a 4-way tie for first place of anomaly detection, security, pattern recognition, and intelligent alerting. And then the last one was just automated IT service problem. And so except for security, it really can stand on its own. A different use case, different organization, perhaps. But the rest of it all just sort of flows together. And so they're really just looking for the sort of end. Everybody's sort of looking for the end to end, right? And so I think like anomaly detection was number 1 at 56% versus security at 55%. And, I think the key is, it's kind of obvious that's one of the reasons why you buy the product. But I think the key is looking at what's under the covers of that. Is it, there's different vendors that are good with logs, different vendors that are good with metrics and multivariable, others that are more event focused, like you said, and maybe domain agnostic of pulling events from different domains. And so I think it's really it's kind of, to me, it's an obvious statement, not a surprising finding, that the certain percentages. I'm actually kind of surprised they're as low as they are. But I think it really is the next layer below that when you start looking at vendors and kind of what they're really able to provide.
Yeah, I think that when I read these statistics, and I'm not sure I think they're low. I mean, when you see things that are 56%, that's actually, I think, statistically pretty high from a focus area, right? Because what you probably have is you probably have a number of other areas that go from like 56 down to like, 10, right?
Yeah.
And there's always going to be different things they're working on, but where they're primary. And to me, all these 4 use cases, they're all kind of the same thing in my mind.
Yeah.
And it's anomaly detection and pattern recognition and alerting and escalation. That's kind of the whole chain of event management, whether you're on infrastructure monitoring or the security monitoring side. So I'm not too terribly surprised to see that they're all kind of the same number, because I think they're all kind of seen as the same thing. I know when we're working with our customers on AIOps and looking at use cases, we would lump this all kind of together because being able to process amounts of data, the whole purpose is for you to look for patterns, right? And when you're looking for patterns, then you're looking for root cause and correlation. And at that point, you're saying, okay, what do we do about it? So to me, they're all kind of interlinked. So I'm not too terribly surprised that they're all that same priority level.
Yeah, the one thing that did jump out to me that is useful is we've talked about use cases, and I think last week, the week before, we talked about experimenting and innovating in AIOps in areas that are really growing for you or where you're investing in network anyway. And so they broke out 3 top areas of investment. One was in security, the firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and whatnot. The second area that companies are investing in AIOps is really in the application delivery networks. So in your data center, in your cloud, and the more intelligent part of the networks that are delivering application quality. And then the third, which I don't know if it was a distance third, which was the wide area network and Wi-Fi. And so I do think that is kind of enlightening as to where customers, when it does come to network and really focus on the network, as to where they see the need for AIOps, security and the more complex and application delivery networks is really the biggest area of focus.
Yeah, I think we should spend some more time talking about automated, the application delivery side of AIOps, and I'll make sure we slot that for future broadcasts, because I think that's a super interesting place to be spending some time looking at AIOps use cases, so that because as we get more web-based applications and containers and dynamic loading and things like that, using AI to automatically spin up, spin down, move around, change configurations, allocate more resources to particular applications. I think that's really, really important stuff when it comes to service quality and delivery. So I think that's that's a subject we'll start touching on in the future. I think that's an exciting area to talk about.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so we want to shift to the next.
Sure. Let's shift over. Let's talk about
from,
the state of AIOps.
Yeah, so this is really the second article we pulled out was from Allied Market Research, or ICT, at Allied Market Research, and they really talk about the growth of the market. And I thought the numbers they put here were kind of insane growth. If you want to invest in something, this is an area, if you believe the numbers. They talk about the AIOps market size for 2020 was $26 billion. By 2030, in just 9 years from now, it's going to be $644 billion, which, that's a CAGR of 37%. That's doubling pretty much every 2 years the size of the market. And so, I think the big thing that stood out for me there was, is this a new market, or is this just really new features coming to the same market? And I think it's a combination of both. It's, so they're going to be redefining certain products and relaunching certain products, but that are the same products. It's just now they've got AIOps features, and they're, instead of being the IT monitoring, market, they're now part of the AIOps market. And so I think a lot of it's going to be that. But as we talked before, there's a lot of smaller vendors or other emerging vendors that are coming forth that are going to, drive that overall growth. I think the other thing I'll just point out is, maybe I'll just highlight and then ask for your thoughts, Sean, is where that growth's going to be. So one of them was They see a lot of growth in services, not just product. They see growth in real-time analytics versus maybe maybe something that's post-processing. They see growth in cloud versus on-premise. From a market standpoint, it's not surprising. Health and life sciences, they see the biggest growth. I think not surprising to anybody. And then the last is Asia. So most of the growth to date has been in North America. They're looking at more growth in Asia Pacific, which is pretty standard sort of trend line for a lot of technologies. But Sean, I guess your thoughts on sort of where this growth is coming from, and do you believe it?
Yeah, so when I was looking at this article, I was just blown away by the numbers. Do I believe it? It feels really, really big to me, and a little too big. And I've looked at other studies where they're showing like the current market is somewhere 10 billion, 12 billion. So we're already off by a factor of 2.5% of where they think we are today with other studies I've seen. And getting to 644 or $645 billion in the next 9 years. My first question is what are they counting as AIOps, right? So, and I think what concerns me about like these articles is that they're not giving a lot of context of what AIOps actually is. So they could just be including anything that basically has the word AIOps attached to it is now part of this. And like you said, if you look at something like ServiceNow, right? And ServiceNow is like, hey, we're putting machine learning into our platform. Well, they do, I don't know, $15 billion in revenue or something like that. So, okay, they're AIOps, and that goes into the category. And I don't think that's really accurate either. I'm not going to argue. I don't really have the data to basically back up whether I think these are accurate or not. I think they're really high. That being said, I do believe that the growth is pretty high. I don't know if the market's going to be growing, almost 40% every single year, like you said, doubling every 2 years. But it is growing fast, right? And so what I thought was interesting, where I spent most of my time, is around the expansion areas. And I don't have a lot of experience doing work in Asia. I do have some experience in my past jobs of selling into, running a worldwide business for BMC, that Asia represented the least amount of our revenue. And most of our revenue came from North America. The vast majority of that revenue came really from the East Coast. And then it was really EMEA and really mostly, Western Europe. And then Asia was kind of a far back on that. So that being said, I think there's a tremendous amount of headroom for companies and in Asia. And obviously, what's really interesting is you've seen a lot of state-sponsored investments by China in AI, and there's a lot of discussions going on about AI in general and how China is over-investing compared to the United States in AI, and that's concerning in a lot of ways. So, but I think ultimately, the use cases I think are right in where they're looking at where this is going, and if you take this article in perspective, right, and not get too wrapped around the numbers, but really where they're talking about, I think it's a pretty accurate article.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, nothing else to add there. Do you want to move on to the next major topic?
Yeah, let's move on. I encourage everybody who's wants to, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see all the links to these articles. Feel free to click on them and read them yourself. But, anyways, yeah, so let's talk. So the last thing, kind of a good segue, right, is into 2021. And there was an interesting article that came out from Tech Central. And, you and I talked about this. It's like, the overarching numbers of growth over the next, 9 years was, one discussion, what's happening now, right? And so so where we're looking at right now is what's happening in 2021. And I think that's a really relevant thing to be talking about. And so this contributor at Tech Central put together this article, really talking about deeper insights and greater automation, the evolution of DevOps, which I think is a really key thing. I think DevOps is really the basis. DevOps is really kind of the basis of where we started with AIOps, right? And so more investment into DevOps. I think that this goes back to the point I made earlier about automated application delivery, right? And that whole topic, that's really rooted in DevOps. So, and then really it talks about preparation of your business for AIOps. So, love to get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I think on that last, I think some of the areas where investments are going to go aren't that surprising, I think. But the reality is the diversity of data collection across multiple clouds is going to be a big trend, as I talked about. I think, just bringing into play different siloed data sets today. So you've got your log tool, and you've got your metrics and performance monitoring tools, and you got your event management. I think right now they all are fairly specialized, and there's really just a handful of very large vendors that are pulling all that together, and especially across multiple. The threshold setting, I think that's a large cable company complained, with a previous engagement I was in about the vendor needing to, really, we shouldn't be setting thresholds and deciding what the thresholds are. The system itself should be setting those thresholds. And that even isn't manual, that's dynamic. If setting standard deviation thresholds isn't really cutting it. It's the system itself should see when there's an anomaly in the metric data, and even looking across multiple metrics. And so I think that's a big area of improvement. But you mentioned the last one, which was the business adoption. And I like two quotes in there. One was sort of a warning, or not a warning, but a be aware, buyer beware, which is she said, vendors using ML are in a very trivial way. So I think that there are a lot of vendors that are calling it AI or calling it ML, where really it's more algorithms or rules that are being created, maybe with a little more flexibility, or really introducing more variables. But what she also said, the author also said, was that AIOps is really adding a whole new level of complexity and knowledge and intelligence, and that if that's not really matched with organizational readiness, it's going to fail to deliver on the business outcomes. And I think that, combination of making poor purchases, are you selecting the right technology, but are you also preparing the organization to bring this in and have the right structure and agile sort of release process and the right talent that's being applied to a new talent, but you're also bringing in the domain experts like we talked about in the past. It's going to fail to deliver on the outcomes you're going after. So I think that was a big kind of final point she made, was under the heading kind of preparing your business for the AIOps implementation.
Yeah, I think that point, I picked up on that too, that point of kind of rudimentary ML, right, is really important, because I think there are a lot of companies out there, vendors, that are playing around with, machine learning. And we've talked about this before, where when we talk about AIOps, it's really machine learning at this point. And I think there are a lot of vendors out there, especially traditional vendors, who were doing something non-AIOps driven, right, as a typical use case of massive amounts of data. The idea of being able to insert like machine learning into their product in some way and then claim it as AIOps is, I think that's more prevalent, right? There are particular vendors out there that are investing, that they are AIOps platforms, right? And they have R&D teams that are building robust models and learning off of that. So I think that's a good point when people are looking at AIOps platforms, of trying to understand. And that's part of the navigation of all this noise coming in, right, around AIOps. Yeah. I think what's interesting too is that this article, tying back to the last one we talked about, is where do they see growth? And they said the same thing, growth in healthcare, media, entertainment, and energy, right? And that makes sense, right? These are all industries with heavy digitized services, media and entertainment, right? Everything's being delivered digitally now, and healthcare going through a massive digitization of healthcare records, and telehealth with the pandemic, and all kinds of things that they're trying to digitize the health experience. So that makes sense to me, and it's both articles kind of touch on that, which I thought was interesting. So.
Yeah, the last thing that I don't know if it was in the article, but just I guess some maybe more executives or business leaders or management, might view, or even some engineers might view machine learning as effortless, right? As all I got to do is throw data at it and it's going to work. And I think that business readiness was key, that it's not effortless. I think even in, we say it is still machine learning, but you still need to prepare the data. You still need to do a lot of data preparation and organize your data so that you're, if you want to recognize cats, you don't throw a bunch of clouds in there, right? But so there's a lot of effort there, but there's also, I think, incremental. We don't want to get too dogmatic and say, well, that's not really machine learning. If today you're doing X, Y, and Z to prepare your data, to maintain a bunch of rules, and a technology is going to come in and take away 60% of that or 70% of it, but you still gotta be smart about what your network is and how to apply it. That's still progress, right? And so I don't want to get into the I think that machine learning, there's a lot of trivial way. I mean, if that trivial way is really going to move your business forward and it's a good cost benefit analysis, you should be looking at it. So that's the last thing I'll mention.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, what you said was really this idea of people thinking it's effortless, right? I mean, we talked last week, right, about the need for teams to do AIOps and AI in general. So you're looking at data scientists and AI modeling people and translators, right, that understand the business objectives to the AI, workflow and model, and like you said, data preparation, data sourcing. So it's not effortless at all, right? It's a shift really of investment to being able to invest in a team of people that can essentially build robust models and continue to make these models more efficient. So you can hire less people downstream to handle all the information coming in. So you don't have to blow up your operations organization. If you're looking at, data, doubling every single year, which is kind of what we're seeing, right? The amount of data coming into these operation shops are doubling. Essentially, if you went linear, you'd have to double your operations organization and analyst teams and NOC operators and SOC operators to handle that. And that's the point of really AI ops and machine learning, is the ability to invest in a different area so that you can control downstream growth in those, more analyst type roles and not have to double, triple those. So, but it certainly isn't effortless. And we'll be talking a lot more about this in the future of just what it takes to become really good. And which leads to kind of what we talked about last week. And we should bring this up as a topic too, is like, how do you do AI ops? How do you do machine learning if you don't have the resources to build teams like that, right? And I think there's going to be a lot of mid-sized enterprises that just won't be able to do it. They won't be able to fund it, and they won't be able to find the talent. So with that, I think we'll wrap up for today. I hope you have a really great weekend. I want to thank Windward Consulting, our sponsor. You can see them at www.windward.com. Windward's the global leader in AIOps. And if you, like I said, if you click on the left-hand side, you can see all the articles we talked about today. And I thank you for tuning in this week, and we'll see you next week. Bill, have a great weekend. Have fun on your college visits.
Thank you, Sean. You too. And we'll see everybody next week.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation about AIOps and the future of IT operations. Interested in a deeper dive on these topics? Check out our resources available at AIOpsevolution.com. And remember to subscribe to get the latest episode.